Whenever I look at great leaders across tech, the better ones are the ones that roll up their sleeves. They're willing to do the dirty work themselves, right? I think as a
Yeah.
PM, if you have the ability to look it up yourself, to test it out yourself, to look into different environments. So you're literally clicking from environment to environment, scrapping to see if the versions exist, and then doing some testing.
Welcome to a new episode of Tech to Table Talks. Today we're joined by Wilson Wei, a product leader with a wealth of experience across multiple industries. Wilson has managed high-profile projects at companies like Veeva Systems, where he successfully implemented Vault quality management systems, generating over $3 million in revenue and spearheading 20-plus go-lives across global pharmaceutical enterprises like Eli Lilly, Pfizer, and Moderna. At Litify, he led key product developments, boosting document management's net revenue retention to 110%. All this while working remotely from different countries around the world like the US, Europe, Brazil, Mexico, and Taiwan. I have yet to meet another product manager with a career like Wilson's. So with that, let's dive in. Hey Wilson, welcome to Tech to Table Talks. How have you been?
Hey David, good to be on and happy that you asked me to be on. I'm excited. I've been good. How about you?
Pretty good. It feels like it's been a very long time since we spoke, and you've been traveling the world and all that, but I'm very excited to have you here as a guest on Tech to Table Talks.
Yeah, likewise. Excited to be here.
Yeah, well, you've been to a few Tech to Table events and dinners, and you kind of know about the mission of Tech to Table, and it's all around bringing together the tech community and trying to create new friendships, authentic relationships, and ultimately share knowledge and share best practices. Founders, investors, product managers like yourself, engineers, designers, and just really sharing what you've learned in your space. I think Tech to Table Talks is really looking to just drive that at scale globally to allow anyone to really listen in. And I'm excited for everyone, whoever listens, people all over the world to learn from you today. So super excited for this episode.
Likewise, David. And I appreciate you starting this. And I think it's such a great community that you've built. And I also wanted to mention that a few months ago, I remember you introduced me to somebody who had recently graduated from college. I think she was 1 or 2 years into her career, and she wanted to follow, I think, a similar career path to my, and we connected for about 30-45 minutes. And I think it's really nice because networking, mentorship, I really believe in these things. I'm in a certain point in my career. I always want to listen to people who are 5 years ahead of me. I also want to give back to people who are 5 years behind me, right? So I think it's such a great community to be able to connect people like myself, like you, like whoever, right?
Amazing.
So just wanted to say that real quick.
Thank you. Yeah, super kind of you. Yeah, I know how much you do for the community and people in tech as well, but let's just dive in a bit. I think one of the key reasons why I wanted to talk to you, you have such a unique perspective. As someone that has lived in many cities in the world, worked in tech as a product leader in San Francisco, in New York, as a digital nomad, you've hopped around all over the world, and I'm sure you have such unique insights that not many other product leaders has. So I think there's a lot to unwrap in this call, and I'm excited to dive in. But maybe to just get things rolling, could you maybe share a bit about yourself for all the amazing guests that want to learn a bit more about Wilson and your background?
Yeah, sure. Maybe I can start with a slightly cringy statement, but I'm kind of like a small town boy living the big city dream. So I was born and raised in a small town in the Midwest, and I went to college in Atlanta, went to Georgia Tech, and then I lived in different places like Houston, San Francisco, New York. And ever since I started my SaaS career, I've had remote positions. And so this was this 2018, Q1 of 2018. And I took full advantage, and I traveled to places like Austin. I worked from many cities, and then I went internationally as well, working from Mexico and working from Brazil, working from Europe as well. And I've also taken business trips internationally as well. So um, one of my favorite ones was Shanghai in 2019. Feel like I got exposed to the working culture there as well. But I think overall, 6 years in B2B SaaS, and this year I'm currently working on something in Taiwan and in Asia. And it's perfect because for my situation, I have a lot of family here in Taiwan. It's nice to be physically located in this place so that I can spend quality time with family that I couldn't before, and then work on something that I'm excited about. But I will say that I plan on coming back to New York City very, very soon. Looking forward to seeing you as well, David. Hopefully some
Amazing. New York definitely misses you, so everyone's excited. The city's excited for you to come back. But super cool. Thank you for sharing that. I think you're one of the first guests on the podcast, and we're going international straight away. And that's really, really special. I guess just following up on what you just mentioned, you've worked in many cities all over the world. You've seen the different perspectives in the tech industry in San Francisco, New York, Shanghai. Do you see any differences or similarities across these ecosystems? And any thoughts on that on your end?
Absolutely. So I think there's the general population culture differences. So yes, if you take away working cultures aside, regular cultures, it's going to be different. I think that's pretty obvious. But I think one thing that I've noticed, for example, in Taiwan, semiconductors, right? Electronics manufacturing. That is what Taiwan business is known for. And when Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, came in June of this year, there was so much AI buzz. And that was when the tech stocks soared to its peak of this year so far. And I think nobody could shut up about NVIDIA. Nobody could shut up about AI. I think it was a lot of buzz. And Jensen Huang announced that NVIDIA was planning on building different, I think, centers, plants in Taiwan for the next 5 years. So it was just a really exciting ecosystem environment. The whole city felt it. The entire place felt it. And last week, Taipei hosted like a crypto conference as well in Asia. So there were a lot of people who flew in from all over Asia for these conferences. Now, I will say, to answer your question about NYC SF, I think one thing that I haven't really seen is, ironically, my specialty, which is enterprise SaaS. Whenever I was in San Francisco, when I was in New York, I could network easily with people in the space. It doesn't matter whether you work for Salesforce, whether you work for Augusto or small startups also in that space. I felt like you could easily connect and share perspectives in that space. But I think in Taiwan, the specialties are, like what I just mentioned, semiconductors, electronics manufacturing, and then last week was crypto. And I think if I were to really zone in on that enterprise SaaS, I think a city that really hosts that here in Asia would be Singapore. So I went to Singapore a couple weeks ago, and I definitely felt the business culture of Singapore is very strong here in Asia. Something that I've noticed, just because I am able to, thankful that I have the experiences to compare NYC and here in APAC as well.
Where do you think B2B SaaS enterprise software space is lacking in Taiwan and more like concentrated in Singapore? Is there something about Singapore that kind of attracts startups in this space? And like, is it the regulatory landscape? Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think I read a book called Chip War. A lot of people have read it recently, but it talks about semiconductors, talks about the battle for the most valuable resources, I guess, recently especially. And I think to answer your question in a concise manner, I think a big part of it is government. And in the 1980s, Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company, TSMC, was founded by engineers, and specifically Morris Chang. And he worked in the US and semiconductors. He brought that knowledge to Taiwan. The government subsidized it, subsidized a lot of it. It just became this world-class mass production of the most advanced semiconductors in the world. And it's to this day, it's incredibly difficult to replicate it. And the book talks about it. And so I really enjoyed that book for that reason. And I think another comparison that I like to make in Asia is Hong Kong. Hong Kong is quite the finance capital of the world, and it helps that they've had a history of that for decades. And I think part of it is regulations as well and government influence. And I think Singapore, it's been one of the better working environments in Asia overall. And I also think it's government influence.
Makes sense.
One city that I haven't mentioned yet is Tokyo. I think a lot of people go to Tokyo for great business opportunities. It's one of the capital hubs of Asia. But I think, why is it, not as strong B2B SaaS compared to semiconductors in Taiwan? I really think it's just because Taiwan a long time ago decided we're going to focus on semiconductors and be really, really, really good at it. Which, hey, I mean, this is something we can all learn from, right? This is something we can all learn from Taiwan. Maybe I should do that with my own career. Maybe I should focus on something and be really, really good at it too. But anyways, I think
I love it. I love how Taiwan really thought long term and had conviction that semiconductor space would just makes a lot of sense in the future. It might not be like super clear, but I think it was a bet that they made and clearly paying off. So kudos to Taiwan. I'm super happy for the country and all the amazing stuff coming out of Taiwan. But let's maybe switch it up a little bit. I think we can spend hours on Asia and NVIDIA and Jensen, but let's get tactical on your product experience. Many years of product experience, very iconic companies, very deep regulatory and legal expertise in that industry. There's not many people, I would say, that has this deep knowledge. So I want to definitely pick your brains a little bit in this space. Could you share a bit more about your experience in this space, like the type of companies you worked at, or just your experience as a PM in the regulatory and legal space?
Yeah, sure. So I started my B2B SaaS journey at a company called Veeva Systems, and they basically built products on top of Salesforce platform for pharmaceuticals companies. So imagine your Modernas, imagine your Pfizers, imagine your Eli Lillys. Those were the customers. And then Veeva, the CEO, decided to build a Salesforce equivalent on its own platform. And it was called Veeva Vault. It was such a scalable product, and it helped Veeva surpass the 2 billion in ARR a few years ago. Quite a remarkable company. I think one of the under the radar companies, in my opinion, in this B2B SaaS space. And I switched over to a company called Litify, and they were Series A startup at the time. And they were basically looking to do what Veeva did to pharmaceuticals, but to legal. And so I had the software knowledge. I was going into a new space. And I think one of the biggest lessons that I've learned working at both companies is that in order to build a successful company like that, vertical SaaS, very industry-specific companies, you have to have both knowledges. You have to have software and industry knowledge. And if you don't have either, or if one part is lacking, then it's not going to work. So whenever I first joined Veeva, and then whenever I first joined Litify, I had to really rely on the colleagues who had industry experience. I could help them with the software parts, the more technical aspects. But over time, you had to climb a wall, or swim against the current. And I think that's something that I've really picked up in these vertical SaaS, these industry-specific type of companies.
Fascinating. It's an incredible experience. I think you have such a unique insight into this question of like horizontal versus vertical SaaS. It's something I've been thinking deeply about, and clearly there's been amazing companies in both, so maybe there's not like a right or wrong answer, or or like one's a bigger market or so. I would love to hear your thoughts on that. You see very horizontal products like Notion, like Salesforce that you mentioned, not really solving a specific pain point for a specific persona or industry, but really thinking broad and different use cases, which, I think we both know there's pros and cons to that. Versus when you're vertical, you're very just laser focused on one specific persona and the industry pain points. And you've got a lot of experience in the vertical space. Yeah, any thoughts on any learnings you've had on comparing the two horizontal versus vertical SaaS solutions? Any pros and cons? Would love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I think with vertical SaaS, and then I'd also like to state the question that I always think about is, am I more of a vertical SaaS PM or am I more of a horizontal SaaS PM? And I think that question gets thrown around a lot too, because it is very dependent on how you're wired. But I think with vertical SaaS companies, it's very, very business, very, very customer, I should say, like direct customer facing oriented. And you really, really rely I should say, a specific use case, and you can sometimes only get that through customer feedback. I should say it's more weighted, in my opinion, for vertical SaaS. Whereas horizontal, just imagine your sales force. You're still talking to customers, you're still talking and taking consideration feedback. But yeah, your customer base is broader, and in some ways it could be a little bit harder just because you don't know what to focus on. But you do get to solve problems where it's scalable and it just focus on a breadth of companies. And one of the things that I noticed at Veeva was that we built our own platform. So you had a platform PM team, and then you had the application specific team. And just imagine like the Apple Store. You're using the iOS, and then you can build on top of the iOS platform. That's how all these apps come about. So it's a very similar concept in B2B SaaS, and that's what I mean by platform. And we had like a platform team for, say, reports and dashboards. We had a platform team for objects. We had a platform team for documents and all that. So the way that the PMs interacted on the platform team versus the application specific teams were quite different. Because of the platform team, your customers are actual customers, but then your customers are also the application specific PMs and the application specific teams. Because in some ways, the application specific PMs couldn't release features unless a platform feature was released first. And so I thought that was really interesting to think about. In a sense, within that vertical B2B SaaS environment, you had a horizontal team too. Then what I mean by that is the platform team. So it's very different in that sense. It's something that I started thinking about a lot after I worked at Veeva. But I think in terms of pros and cons, it just depends on how you're wired.
Yeah.
Maybe you like to talk to everybody. Maybe you like to focus on one subset of customers and just really, really focus in and zero in on it. And so I think that's one of the great things about the options that we have.
Amazing. Wow, yeah, just what you said, a thought that came to my mind is I've been listening to a lot of like podcasts on Rippling, and yeah, it's amazing to see the business they have built, but they really have the thought process when they build product is they have a platform and the infrastructure to kind of allow different apps like payroll, like benefits and a few other apps to build on top of that. And what I mean by that is like there's common kind of like archetypes that you can use across these apps, right? Like you just said, like reporting, dashboarding, roles and permissions. That is repeatable across these different applications. So yeah, I think there's something in that for sure on just like simplifying the development process and not doing repetitive work and just leveraging work and then scaling that as well. So thank you for sharing that. Really, really cool. Is there a vertical SaaS company today that has really impressed you, or you're just like looking at it like, wow, very impressive, they're doing so well? Is there a particular vertical SaaS or vertical software that you're very inspired and impressed with?
I think one that comes to mind immediately is Toast, and they're B2B SaaS for restaurants. And the big reason why I know of them is because it touches the consumers. And so when I was in New York, I was paying the bills at restaurants. I would look at the physical hardware, the software as well, the interface, and tip, sign after I paid with my credit card. I thought the physical hardware and the interface was just very comfortable as a user just to look at the UI as a consumer. Now, I think looking at their financials for the B2B side, also very impressive. And I think restaurants aren't necessarily like it's not like super focused, maybe. Some people could disagree with me on that, but I think for Toast to be able to execute the way they did is largely impressive. And it's probably not something that people would really understand from the outside, but execution, I think, is incredibly difficult.
Yeah.
But they did it. They managed to do it. So I think that company has been really impressive that I've seen recently.
For sure. Super impressive. A lot of like strong competitors in the space, but they seem like they're really expanding into all different products for merchants, for restaurant attendees. So yeah, kudos to them. You would actually be a great person to ask. Like a company like Toast for restaurants, for the food and beverage industry. Just going back to what we mentioned earlier, you've lived in a lot of cities, you've worked in a lot of cities. What do you think some of the challenges would be for Toast to really scale internationally and expand internationally? For example, restaurants in the US, like tipping is really, very popular in the US. For me, growing up in Australia, tipping wasn't really a thing. So that's very different. And then I'm sure like the restaurant industries in Asia or Brazil or certain parts of South America is very different on maybe how they receive payments or how customers pay. Yeah, would love your thoughts. Like you've literally been all over the world and ate amazing food all over the world. Any challenges you think Toast will face?
Love this question. I think one thing to consider that might not be super obvious is the country or the place that you're visiting, is there a cash culture? And I say that because I think Brazil had a very, very heavy credit card culture, just like the US. But in a place like Taiwan, and I think a lot of places in Asia for that matter, that I've recently noticed, is that these countries are very cash heavy. Yeah, of course, it's 2024 and a lot of places, bars and restaurants, they accept credit cards as well. But I think a lot of food stalls here in Taiwan and night markets are a big part of the culture. It's cash only in a lot of places. And a product like Toast would never really work. And unless Toast were to expand their product line for this particular use case, which is then they have to evaluate, is it worth it or not? And then what are the regulations? It's going to be different. So I think one thing to consider to kind of summarize that, cash culture versus credit card culture. What are the regulations? How is it different in this country? And then I think number 3 is, do you know somebody who can operationally run the business in the country? And that's extremely important too. Like if you don't know anybody who can run it in Asia, are you going to run it yourself as a CEO or as a GM or whoever? So I think those are 3 major challenges that Toast would face if they wanted to expand internationally.
Yeah, I love that. Such a fascinating topic. I look at in the US, a lot of merchants use Cash App, use Venmo to accept payments. Like my local barber does that, and over the last 6 months, they recently have kind of like stopped accepting Venmo and all that because Venmo's applying certain fees on top of it, and I think it's really interesting. And like you look in Asia as well, like payment methods like Alipay and WeChat Pay and all that. It's such a fascinating space. So I think like horizontal, vertical, but even country specific, city specific. There's so many nuances in tech and how you can build a product, which is to your point, what makes this space and being a product manager super fun and energizing.
Yeah. Can I make a quick comment on that? I think when you just said Venmo and payments, I think internationally, as a quote unquote end user, when I'm paying people back in different countries, it's a huge pain because in Brazil, they have this app called Pix, and it's basically the Venmo for them. But I can't sign up for Pix as a foreigner. And then same thing here in Taiwan. Some people have line pay, some people don't, but most people do direct bank transfers. And as a foreigner, I can't do that. And so is there this international consolidated application to where people can transfer freely? So similar to like a PayPal, similar to a Wise, but it's just not that simple.
Yeah.
There's a product manager out there or a future CEO founder willing to take on this pain point. I would greatly appreciate it as an end user. Maybe I'm talking to myself. Maybe I could be that person. But...
Yeah, I was gonna say, isn't this just yourself? Like, is this your stealth Taiwanese startup that you're building right now? I think, yeah, you are the perfect person to do something in this space. Understand all the different pain points and nuances and regulation in all these different cities and countries. And you've spoken to a lot of like merchants and customers in these countries as well. Yeah, I mean, tell me when. I'll invest in you for sure.
I love it. Yeah, maybe that is my seller. Who knows?
Who knows? It's a secret, but yeah, people will have to come back to listen in episode 10 when Wilson's back for the grand reveal. I'm excited for that.
Looking forward to it.
All right, I do want to go down a different topic. I know previously we spoke. Growing up, you mentioned you love sports a lot. You did a lot of sports growing up. I think you mentioned swimming and a few other sports. How do you think that has influenced you as a professional in tech and specifically as a product manager? And then what sports did you play?
So yeah, I was a competitive swimmer for, I forgot the number now, sorry. Wow. 16 years. 16 years. Yeah, I'm getting old.
Were you in the Olympics just recently?
Yeah, I just came back from Paris. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh wow, yeah, I knew I saw you on TV.
Don't worry, I'm just a regular human being, David. Just kidding.
Amazing. Yeah, very timely. Yeah, the Olympics just the last 2 weeks. So yeah, we'd love to hear your take and how it's helped you in your career.
Absolutely, it dominated my childhood, and I think it was for the better.
Wow.
A lot of work, doubles, early morning swim practices. Yes, I did all of that from when I was 5 years old to college, right? And I was fortunate enough to earn a scholarship to swim at Georgia Tech, an ACC competition, demanding for sure. And on top of that, I think one of the hardest parts about it was balancing that with an engineering degree at Georgia Tech. And what did that require? A ton of discipline. It required a lot of persistence. And I think these are just general life lessons that I think a lot of people are able to get outside of sports too. But for me, that is just how my experience fell into place. And I also noticed that even to today, whenever I step onto like a tennis court for fun, I just really enjoy the intensity of exercising and rolling up my sleeves. And even if it's just a regular pickup game, let's just hit the ball back and forth, I have to go all out. And I think that's just been a personality of mine since my swimming days. Every practice, I feel like I went 100% whenever I could. And I think that's something that's really transferred into my career. I'm just very persistent. I love rolling up my sleeves. And sometimes that can be bad because sometimes you need to take a step back and take a deep breath and look at the big picture. And so I think that is one downside of a quality like that. But for the most part, I think whenever I look at great leaders across tech, the better ones are the ones that roll up their sleeves. They're willing to do the dirty work themselves. And so because of that, I've encouraged myself to keep that part of the persistence, the scrappiness, because I do think that that's a very good quality and a lot of successful entrepreneurs.
For sure. Let's double click into that a bit. When you say you like to roll up your sleeves, you like the scrappy work. What do you mean by that as a product leader, as a product manager? Like what type of scrappy work do you dive into? Is it creating tickets in Jira for your engineers? Is it doing a test fest, being very hands-on in that? Can you elaborate and tell us more on that?
Yeah, I think it's really ironic to say roll up your sleeves and do dirty work in software because really you're just on the computer. You're just clicking and typing and double clicking into things. You're not actually rolling up your sleeves and like moving physical things from place to place, which is really ironic. But in the cloud world, software as a service world, you're still kind of doing that, but in the cloud. And I think one example that I can give that I've noticed in my career that I do repeatedly is when there's an ambiguous problem or a situation and somebody needs the answer to something, I click into things, I dig into things. So maybe can give a recent example, like, hey, does this feature work or does this feature exist? So like there was a search feature a couple months ago where we needed to see that if it was released in 2021 or does it not exist yet? And don't make the engineers answer that question, right? I think as a PM, if you have the ability to look it up yourself, to test it out yourself, to look into different environments. So you're literally clicking from environment to environment, scrapping to see if the versions exist, and then doing some testing. So like if I'm testing, let's say like a wildcard search feature, like if I Google type searching, if I type in JUSTI, like actually type it out, does it return justification words or justify, like these words? So I was testing out that feature to make sure that we had it's not the exact example, but it's a similar example for that feature.
Makes sense.
Was that actually released in previous cycles? Because there was a turnover. We needed to figure out that knowledge exchange. But after doing these different tests, and this is hours of work too, it was fun work. It was dirty work to actually dig into the details and then document it. I have to document it so then the next PM won't have to do it, right? So these are the types of things where, yes, we can say, like, I don't know, and that's okay. For me, an engineer asked me, a customer asked me, somebody from sales asked me, I want to figure it out too. I need to take the initiative and just say, I'm going to roll up my sleeves, look through it, get to the bottom of it, and deliver an answer.
Love it. Yeah, no, great answer. I think not a lot of people that's outside of product or students wanting to get into product or people wanting to like transition into product understand there's a lot of unsexy work and a lot of just grunt work we have to do that isn't super fun, but having that kind of that mentality you have in sports growing up and you're willing to roll up your sleeves, I think that goes a long way in being a successful product leader. I think another thing I would like comment on doing the grunt work is like as a PM, right? Like when you do something great, you hit certain metrics, you've had an amazing launch, you usually give kudos to the team. You don't really take that as a PM. Like you you'll give you kudos to the engineering team, the design team. But the opposite of that is if it's a poor launch, or like if something, there's a really bad, like a bug that really crashed the system, you'll take the blame as a PM, right? Like you wouldn't blame your engineering team or your pod. So yeah, there's a lot of things you have to take as a product manager. You have to have thick skin and be willing to ride the highs and lows. And yeah, I think that's the fun part of being a product leader. Very cool.
I agree.
I do want to go back to just to close off the sporting question, not product related, but like, how did you kind of prepare for these swimming races? Was there specific meals that you took or specific exercises? And do you feel like you brought that over into your career? Meaning, would you kind of do certain things or eat certain things before you start your day? Like, is there this common thread of habits that you do? I'm just curious on that, because like I know, like, for example, I was a swimmer as well growing up, and there would always be the same breakfast on Sunday morning at 6 a.m. You know, my parents would boil eggs for me, and like that was always a 5:30 a.m. Sunday pre-swim meal, and carb me up as well. And then I feel like I brought that into my career sometimes. I'm just like consistent, repetitive meals and preparation before a day. Yeah, but we'd love to hear a bit more about how you've kind of prepared for the sports you did growing up and whether you brought that into your professional career.
Yeah, I think that I'll go into a step further to be a little bit more detailed in answering this question. So I remember when I was swimming, you know, you have your heats, you have your events, you have your lane assignment, and they go in sequential order, right? And so let's say I was in heat 5, so 4 races go before me, basically. And most people, I noticed, would go maybe like 10 minutes, go to their lane 10 minutes before the race. For me, I could never do that because I would get a little anxious, and I would go to my lane maybe 2 minutes before, and even 10 minutes before my race, I would be warming up, doing like a little warm up in the warm up pool, and make sure I'm dry. So I would bring a towel as well, make sure I'm fully dry so I stay warm. And these were like little things that I found were really important to me before a race. And that just got me into a habit. And in the professional world, I almost kind of do that with meetings. Before a big meeting or before a day with lots of meetings, I would do certain things like go to the bathroom, maybe drink 2 cups of coffee right before a big meeting, or maybe take a quick walk around the Flatiron District, come back up, listen to pop-up music, and right before a big meeting or right before a big presentation.
Wow.
I actually think that it's really interesting that my behavior just turned out to be this way. But I think a big takeaway from this is you have to do you. And everybody is different. Everybody's wired differently. And it's really interesting insight to, in my opinion, have this kind of perspective, because like you're watching the Olympics on TV, you have no idea what these swimmers are thinking or going through or how they prepare for things. Yeah. Maybe it's like what you said. Maybe they eat the same things at the same time on a daily basis to get themselves prepared. And everybody is just wired differently. And I think it's really interesting to see how, like, hey, how do you wire yourself? Or like, how do you prepare yourself for a big race or a big meeting? You know?
Yeah. Well, you're not I'm surprised you didn't say you're a push-up or star jump person before a product demo. You don't do anything like pump a few dumbbell curls? No? No,
I just do that with water, and on Friday nights, maybe like a Bud Light or 2. But yeah, that's about it.
Nice. Very cool. Very cool. All right. Amazing, Wilson. Sports, I know it's a topic that you and I are super passionate about. There's so many benefits, but a lot more than just physical, mental health. But we can probably talk about that on another podcast another day. We are coming to an end, and I just want to ask one more question before we close out with the Fast 5 questions, which is like, obviously there's been a lot of talks about artificial intelligence, Gen AI, large language models. Everyone on Earth has probably heard about it or used it over the last few years. What's your perspective on how this emerging technology will transform like the legal or regulatory landscape, I mean, in the industry? You've got a lot of great experience in kind of two vertical SaaS companies in kind of the regulatory space. So yeah, would love to hear your perspective. Do you think a role of a lawyer, I guess, professionals in this space, will that change over the next decade?
I think it's inevitable, and I'm also looking at it from specifically a documents standpoint, and I'm a little bit biased because I worked on documents both at Veeva and at Litify. But I think a big release that came out last year, Box, was the summarization big documents. So Gen AI, large language models, can you summarize this document in 3 to 4 sentences? And I think it's huge for legal. If you can imagine, legal documents can be very, very long and lengthy. And I think while from the B2B side, legal companies, they have templates so that they don't do repetitive work, which is already really nice. But I think AI takes it a step further with summarizing, with generating content. We have all this data, we have all this document. Can you please summarize it in one nice letter? And the AI is not good enough. I think there's just not enough data, I should say, for the AI to be as powerful as it can be. Computing powers are still not what we think it will be in a few years. I personally think it's quite exciting.
Yeah.
There's always the question of, will it replace jobs? Will it displace jobs? I don't know if that will be a huge question yet, but it probably will be a question soon.
Yeah.
I think I'm more of an optimist, glass half full, when it comes to things like this. I think over time, technology has displaced people to do different things so that they can be more productive. I think AI is sort of a similar thing here for this particular case.
Wow, I did not know you were a documents PM twice. Oh, really fascinating. I do have a question on that, a quick follow-on question. I've been fascinated about this space as well. Like, obviously, there's Microsoft Word, Google Docs that most people use as documents. Then there feels like there's been this trend of embedding like a document writing feature directly in products like Notion, Coda. I know Linear most recently, you're able to, I think they allow you to write product specs directly in Linear. And there's also a financial planning company called runway.com, which they also allow you to kind of write like monthly reports about your financial planning and stuff like that directly in the products. Yeah, very fascinated. Would love to hear your thoughts on why do you think startups and companies do that, and not just get users to like adopt Google Docs or Microsoft Word. Any thoughts on that?
I just think it's a tedious process. I mean, like writing reports. I did a little project management too at Veeva, so I had to send weekly reports to customers, figure out our burn rate, and give a summary of what happened in the last week, who's on the team, resources, etc. That's a lot of work.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a lot of tedious work when I feel like it could be not only exported from like a CRM product, but also there should be a summary. Maybe there could be an integration with Zoom where it summarizes meetings for you. And that's already an existing feature in Zoom. I think you have to pay extra for it, if I'm not mistaken, in August 2024. But I mean, I think that Zoom example is a perfect enterprise SaaS use case. That saves so much time. And because I had a habit of doing that my entire career, let me take notes on what's going on in this meeting right now. And that will still probably be around for the next couple of years, but as AI models get better and better, the more data we have, I think it will only shift our focus on things that will make us even more productive, and rather than taking those notes during Zoom meetings. But I don't know. I think just it's a very broad answer, I think, but whatever is tedious will certainly be tackled, and people will look into making people more productive whether it's documents, whether it's creating reports, because I'm speaking firsthand as former project manager, or as a product manager now. It is a lot of work. It's very tedious, and you do need to be detail oriented and make sure that things are correct. So I'm excited for the AI features in the future.
Yeah, so many efficiency gains, and we can focus more on impactful stuff and less of the kind of the manual, repetitive, tedious stuff, like you said. Okay, well, we're coming towards the final stretch of the podcast. Wilson, thank you so much for all the incredible insight. I've learned so much. I mean, I've known you for a while, and I'm still learning things during this podcast, which is amazing. Yeah, you're definitely like a present that just keeps on gifting, I feel, which is incredible. All right, well, up to we're up to the final segment, which I like to call the Fast Five, which is basically 5 quick questions that I'm gonna ask you, it's gonna help listeners get to know you more and your perspective on certain topics. First question is definitely by far one of my favorite questions that I love asking people in tech is, what's one of your favorite products and why? And I guess it can be favorite product today or of all time. Happy to keep it broad, but yeah, we'd love to hear about your favorite product. And it can be software, non-software as well. But yeah, what's your thoughts on this?
I love that question. I have a blog post about this too, sweet aspirations, but I'm going to give a non-conventional answer because I think those are more fun. Because like everybody says Spotify or Instagram, and I think there's too many answers like that, right? I'm going to give a non-conventional answer. My answer is the Taipei subway system. And the reason why I like it so much as an end user is because it's super efficient. And I'm going to give the example of transfer station. Let me compare it, not to say that New York subway system is bad, because I think it's great.
You're going to say your favorite product. I thought you were going to say New York is your favorite product. The subway system is your favorite product.
Well, I'll tell you why that I really like the Taipei metro system, and say that comparing it to New York, you're at Union Square, you enter the subway system, or sorry, I should say you're connecting at Union Square. You're maybe on the L or something. You need to go upstairs to the left, around the corner to take the 456. And then you can go north-south. And I think that transfer process takes about 5 minutes just to walk. And then on top of that, you have to wait an extra whatever it is. And then maybe you're taking the express, so you have to wait even longer. And I'm going to compare that with Taipei. And I think in the 90s, they specifically had a strategy. Whoever designed it is amazing. Like, props to that person. But they built the subway systems in which, for the transfer stations, let's call it the yellow line and the green line. Okay. And you're at a certain platform, and if you're going north on the yellow line, and if you want to transfer, chances are you're also going to want to go north on the green line. And so they built the tracks to where the transfer stations, you're able to just go across the platform and make it into the subway. 10-second walk.
Wow.
And most people at transfer stations, a lot of people I should say, they're transferring. Or maybe they're getting off. Or maybe they're just continuing. But they're focused on those end users who need to transfer. And if you need to go south, then you need to go one level below. But I think my point is that, like, it was clearly specifically designed so that transfers are seamless, and that sometimes the trains just happen to be within 30 seconds of each other. And you'll notice that they wait. They wait so that the passengers who do want to transfer from the other subway can go across. I don't know. As a passenger, love that. It's almost as if I didn't transfer at all, and I can get from place to place so efficiently. And again, as an end user, and I'm only paying $1 for such a great service and product. I
Wow.
love it. It's such a great product, and it's
So delightful.
nobody really, not a lot of people think about this, but I do because I think about products a lot and
Yeah.
in different places around the world. But wow, I was just mind blown. I was talking to my friends about this,
Amazing.
like, you're a dork, Wilson, but I think this is a great product, and it's super
Yeah, great answer.
I love
Great
it.
answer. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I appreciate people that are very obsessed over great custom experience and just well thought out all the the details and nuances in just I guess like delighting people like yourself with their product. So great. Moving on to the second one. So obviously, Tech to Table, our first product has been dinners and unique gatherings, usually over food and beverages. Second one is if you could have dinner with anyone in the world, alive or no longer here, who would it be and why?
I think my answer would be Mark Benioff, CEO of Salesforce. And I think it's because I've worked at software companies that were so heavily influenced by Salesforce. I think he built the CRM product. Maybe
Yeah.
that's a controversial statement, but he built a B2B SaaS company that inspired so much in this world of enterprise SaaS, and then with infrastructure, AWS, Google Cloud, GCP, and Azure, that those infrastructure services were born after Salesforce was started, and then Salesforce took advantage. But I think he's been CEO for 25 years, and so much of the world has changed in 25 years. Salesforce is still a world-class top tier
Yeah.
company, and not just in enterprise SaaS, like overall too. And I think good CEOs are able to adapt in different environments, different political climates, different situations. So there was the dot-com boom in, 2003. There was the birth of cloud services infrastructures in 2007-ish. And now the SaaS boom for the next 13 years after that, COVID, and then this AI boom. Knowing or just hearing about Mark Benioff, how is he able to navigate through these different environments? I'm very curious.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear it.
Amazing.
I think a good CEO is super important to make a successful company. So would love to chat with you. He's definitely
Yeah.
inspired me.
Incredible. I have to ask you this. Where would you take Mark for dinner? Is there a specific restaurant or cuisine you'd want to take?
Wow, that's a lot of pressure. I think somewhere between McDonald's and a 4-star or 5-star restaurant, steakhouse. I can't remember the name. It's on Billionaires Row that I went to last year. Somewhere in the middle, so I don't get judged either way. That's where I would take.
No, not like Taiwanese beef noodles or something.
I mean, that's a good suggestion. I haven't thought too much about it for a date that doesn't exist yet. Maybe I'll give a little Taiwanese flavor just to get into it.
I mean, yeah,
sounds good.
It's delicious. I am craving some Taiwanese beef noodles. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, let's go to the next question. You mentioned you do a lot of mentorship, and I know how much of a giving person you are. What's your number one advice to someone that kind of wants to follow your pathway, your career pathway in life? Career, but also, I guess, personally, that you traveled to a lot of countries, you lived in a lot of cities, you've kind of had that flexibility of being a digital nomad and kind of work and have a career anywhere in the world. Yeah, any tips or advice to someone that maybe wants to be Wilson one day?
I don't know if I would recommend it. I'm just kidding. Being Wilson, quite dangerous, but I think just being really, really, really persistent, and I also like knowing when not to be persistent. So the theme is persistence, and trying really hard, I think is extremely important. But knowing not to be too persistent and maybe take baby steps one at a time, being patient with that too. So if you want to get to level 5 or something, hypothetically, you're not going to get there overnight from level 1, unfortunately. You just have to wait, get to level 2 first, be patient, but also be persistent and have that long-term focus.
Yeah.
And I think this is great advice for myself too. So I don't know. There's a lot that can happen that can discourage you from saying, "Oh, never mind, let me do something else." But I think just keeping on track is so important, and certainly stems from my experience in swimming, as we were mentioning earlier.
Yeah.
But I think that's a very valuable quality in a person too.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. I've been thinking a lot about, and I've heard a lot of entrepreneurs really talk about, you got to really enjoy the journey, and not necessarily just think about the destination, right? And
exactly,
it's those nights, it's those days, it's those meetings, it's everything, the grind. You got to really appreciate and enjoy that. Yeah, because that part is probably 80%, 90% of like getting to the end destination. So I couldn't agree more. Okay, well, final two. The next one's around thinking into the future. What are you most excited about in the tech industry, product industry, or anything in general?
I think my answer will be the obvious answer, which is AI. And the reason why I say that is because I like to be productive. I like to get things done. And then the fallback of that is I get frustrated when things don't go the right way, right? Which is something I certainly need to continue working on. But it is expected, and it already has to a certain degree, make us more productive. I think to me that's exciting. And in my opinion, models, the amounts of data, the computing power of AI, they're not quite good enough today.
Yeah.
I think it will take some time, but once it gets to a certain point, I am very excited to see how it can help us be very, very productive at work. It's going to be less tedious or soften the pain points of whatever we're doing at work, whatever we're doing in our normal daily lives as consumers. So I think looking from it from that angle makes me excited for the next 5 years.
Yeah. I mean, you teed it up for me. I have to ask you, how have you used AI? What's been some use cases, or how has it been very impactful and beneficial in your life, in maybe saving time, saving money? Yeah, I'd love to hear how you use AI yourself, professionally or personally.
Yeah, I'll give an example that I did yesterday. I'm taking a trip to India. This is going to be a vacation at the end of this month, and I didn't really know where to start. So I used ChatGPT Trip Planner, and I gave very specific parameters to the prompt, and I said, I'm traveling to India for 1 week. These are the things I like. This is the amount of time that I have, and I'm flying into Delhi airport. Please give me an itinerary, and I would like to visit 3 different places, and that's it. And it gave me a very very good summary of it, and I cross-checked it with my Indian American friend, and he said it was good. He trashed some of it. And I think that part, the AI, can be better in the next 5 years, right?
Yeah.
But it saved me a lot of research time. I feel like it gave me a start. And I think that's the point for today. Certainly AI, I keep saying this, but I think it's true. It's just not quite good enough to really, really be super reliable. But it's a start. Yep. It's a draft. It's like drafting a document without having to start from scratch. I think it's a great thing. And I feel like it saved me a considerable amount of time on the research.
Amazing. Oh, wow. I did not know you were going to India. I feel like we got to do another podcast after that, because I've been very fascinated about tech in India. I know it's booming there, and there's a lot of amazing startups in India, but please do some on the ground research when you visit. I'd love to learn more, and that will be on a future podcast episode for sure.
Sounds good.
Final question, and I love asking this one because it really tells a lot about yourself as a person, and I know like a lot of people will listen to this podcast and just learn so much about how you think and how you operate, and have just so many incredible insights. But do you have a favorite quote or a mantra that you kind of like living by, that kind of drives you on a day-to-day?
I do. I'm going to have to look it up real quick. It's a Muhammad Ali quote. It's basically, whenever you let me just give the meaning. So before like a big meeting or a big presentation or big fight or big race or whatever it is, the result has basically already been determined. It's all in your preparation, mentally, your approach to the execution.
I love that.
And I love it because I feel like that was true for me as a swimmer. It's true for me in my professional life. But here's the quote. The fight is won or lost far away from witnesses, behind the lines in the gym, and out there on the road, long before I dance under those lights. I use that quote. I thought about that quote a lot as a swimmer. And I don't know, for me, there's this performance stress curve. There's a bell curve. I think I'm in the middle. I need a little bit of pressure, stress, but not too much in order to perform well. And so like I think about that quote and say, look, I've worked really hard. I've done a ton of preparation. Let's just go out there and fight under those lights. And I don't know, I just really like that quote for some reason.
Yep. No, one of my favorite things, or framework I've been thinking about is like just the concept of input and output. Like what you put into it is really what you get out of it. And that applies to everything and anything in life. And that quote definitely nicely articulates that framework for sure. Well, Wilson, that was incredible. Over an hour of just incredible insights. Is there anything else you think I missed, or anything you want to leave any final messages on to the Tech Table community?
No, but I will mention on the personal note that you and I, before this episode, we chatted how our goal was to do this for 45 minutes, and now it's basically been like an hour and 15, and that's just so typical us. I was like, yeah, absolutely. We'll totally mark it in 45 minutes. But I mean, look, I'm a good friend of the Tech to Table founder, and we have a lot to catch up on. We're both passionate about a lot of different things. And, for David's my homie. So, when David asked me to be on the podcast, I was really excited. I think you've created an incredible community. You've brought so many people together. I know people because of your Tech to Table events that I would not have met otherwise. But I'm still connected to them in New York, and
thank you.
Very big fan of Tech to Table.
Thank you. We're super grateful to have fans and supporters like yourself who literally roll up your sleeves to help me prepare for dinner. So yeah, you're rolling your sleeves in all aspects of life. No, Wilson, that was incredible. An hour and 15 minutes of so many deep insights, from swimming to tech in Taiwan to NVIDIA to documents. I think we went everywhere. Yeah, to taking Mark to like Taiwanese beef noodles. It was such an insightful episode, and we're super lucky to have you. But thank you so much. I'll definitely catch up with you very soon, and best travels in India and throughout Asia. Thank you so much, Wilson.
Thanks, David. I'll see you soon.
Thank you for listening to another serving of Tech to Table Talks. We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you found the podcast valuable and entertaining, please support us by subscribing to our Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube channels. Please also give us a rating or leave a review to help us reach more listeners. Until next time, we'll see you in the next episode and also at a table near you.